trapped in Bachelor's Grove. It was a cloudy afternoon when Emily decided to visit Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, a notorious site near Chicago infamous for its ghostly legends. She had always been fascinated by the paranormal and thought exploring the cemetery alone would be a thrilling adventure. Equipped with her camera and a flashlight, she ignored the warnings of her friends, brushing off their tales of eerie apparitions and malevolent spirits. The trail leading to the cemetery was overgrown, branches clawing at her jacket as if trying to deter her. When she arrived, the old iron gates stood ajar, creaking softly in the wind. Inside, the gravestones were crumbling, some leaning precariously, others almost swallowed by the earth. The air was heavy with an unnatural stillness, broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves. Emily wandered through the cemetery, taking pictures and narrating her journey for her small online following. "It's creepy," she admitted into her phone, but nothing too scary. As she ventured deeper, the world seemed to dim. The late afternoon sun vanished behind thick clouds, casting the cemetery in an eerie gray light. She paused by a particularly weathered gravestone and noticed a faint sound, like whispers carried on the breeze. "Hello?" she called, her voice wavering. No response. She shrugged it off, convincing herself it was her imagination. But as she moved on, the whispers grew louder, morphing into indistinct murmurs. Her unease deepened when she realized she could no longer see the entrance. Checking her phone, she saw the time was 5:15 p.m., yet the screen flickered before going black. "Great," she muttered. "No service." The temperature dropped sharply, and a dense fog rolled in, swallowing the headstones. Emily's flashlight flickered to life, yet its beam barely cutting through the mist. Panic began to creep in as she tried retracing her steps, but every path led her deeper into the cemetery. The murmurs grew clearer now, forming words that sent chills down her spine. "You shouldn't be here. Who's there?" she yelled, spinning around. Her flashlight landed on a figure, a man in a black suit standing motionless in the distance. His face was obscured, and before she could react, he vanished into the fog. Emily's heart raced. She quickened her pace, desperate to find the exit. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a small, stagnant pond. Its surface was disturbingly still, reflecting the foggy cemetery with unnatural clarity. Then she saw it, a woman in a white dress floating above the water, her eyes hollow and her expression void of emotion. Emily froze as the woman turned to her, raising a skeletal hand to point toward the cemetery's center. "Leave," the woman whispered, her voice echoing unnaturally. "I'm trying!" Emily screamed, backing away. But as she turned, she collided with something, or someone. It was the man in the suit again, his face now visible. His eyes were sunken, his skin gray and lifeless. Without a word, he reached for her, his cold hand grazing her arm. Emily screamed and bolted, her flashlight slipping from her grasp. The cemetery seemed to warp around her. The headstones shifted positions, the paths twisting and leading nowhere. Her breathing grew ragged as the whispers escalated into anguished cries. In the distance, she spotted a faint light. Hope surged in her chest as she ran toward it, but as she approached, the light dimmed, revealing an open grave. Standing beside it was the woman in white, her hollow eyes now glowing faintly. "Join us," the woman hissed. Emily stumbled backward, tripping over a root and falling hard onto the damp ground. She scrambled to her feet, her hands scraping against jagged rocks. In her panic, she spotted a familiar statue, a broken angel she had passed earlier. She remembered the way out. Summoning her remaining strength, she sprinted toward the statue, ignoring the shadows that seemed to reach for her from the fog. The cries followed her, growing louder with every step. Finally, she broke through the mist, the iron gates of the cemetery appearing before her. She didn't stop until she was back on the main trail, her lungs burning and her legs trembling. When she reached her car, she locked the doors and sat shaking for several minutes. Her phone flickered back to life, the time reading 11:59 p.m. She had been in the cemetery for hours, though it felt like minutes. As she started the engine and sped away, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The fog lingered at the cemetery's edge, and for a brief moment, she saw the man in the suit watching her, his hollow eyes following her retreat. Emily never spoke of that night again. But every now and then, when she passed a mirror or a shadow crossed her path, she felt a cold presence and knew the spirits of Bachelor's Grove had not let her go entirely.